would you feel about paying $12 for a cup of coffee? Well, that's a prediction that was splashed across the papers, being read in many Aussie cafes this morning.
Well, we thought we had better prosecute the economics, and so here we have Phillip Di Bella, who runs the Coffee Commune. It's a network of 1,800 cafe owners, roasters and suppliers. Now, Phillip, this figure you've come up with, $12 a cup in 3 years' time, how did you come up with that number?
Yeah, look, it sounds crazy, but who thought we would have been paying $7 right now, 12 months, 18 months ago? But the simple one is the economics of wages. Pre-COVID, cafes were looking at about, 30%. 30% was the wages bill. Now you're talking 45 to 50% of a cup of coffee is wages and most items out of a cafe. So wages has been the biggest part. And then, of course, I've been in this industry 36 years. This is the first time in 36 years that I've seen every single element that makes up a cup of coffee go up at the same time. And that is, freight, that is wages. You remember, we're a country of imports. So your packaging comes from overseas, your green bean comes from overseas. So it's not just the cost of the ingredient, it's also the cost of the freight, the cost of the insurance, the cost of gas in the last 12 months has gone up 22%. Insurances are up 24%. So when we're talking a cup of coffee, we're not just talking the beans and the milk, that's the cheapest part. We're talking about the labour, which is about 45 to 50%. The GST is obviously 10%. Utilities and insurances are now around 15%. So when you start to look at it, you're running out of percentages. So cafe owners are lucky to be making about 4% was the figure that came out from the IBIS report last year, 4% profit. You'd get more money by putting that investment in the bank.
But the average price for a takeaway flat white last year was less than $5. How can it go up by 100% in 3 years when that's less than the inflation rate, which is below 3% right now?
Yeah, well, again, the biggest what keeps the price of coffee down when they're doing those averages is CBD. So the average price in a CBD is right now would probably be about $5.50, $6. The average price out in the suburbs is probably about $6.50, $7. And when I say this, you've got to compare the cafe, which is about 120 square metres that has the full-blown kitchen, 4 to 10 staff working, is going to be more expensive than the espresso bar that's 20 square metres that has 2 workers open 5 hours a day. So we've got to make that clear differentiation. That's why we're seeing the return of the suburban espresso bar, where it's all takeaway, the food is brought in, so there's just little stuff like croissants and muffins, and there's no kitchen on premise. So you will get a cup of coffee for say $5 or $6 right now in an espresso bar, where it's takeaway, where it's small format, 20 square metres, it's 6 hours a day. But when you go into those bigger format cafes, which we've had the luxury of having, certainly up until COVID, where they're 120, 150 square metres, the fit outs are over about $1 million. They're running minimum 4 staff to 12, 15 staff. Those prices will climb. So when we, there is a disparity of pricing that people have really got to understand. And my whole impact for me, that my mission is about just educating the consumer that hey, when you're walking into a cafe, you can. Yeah,
sorry, Phillip, I don't want to cut you off, but I'm just curious as to what happens to Australian coffee culture. Are we going to pay $12 a cup of coffee? Doesn't the whole game
No, we won't.
break down?
The simple answer is we won't. Well, we won't, right? We won't pay because we don't have the disposable income, which is, what I've been talking about. So what should it be is 10 to 12. What will it be? It won't be that, but the cafe owners, again, won't be making the profit, and if they're not making a profit, they're going to close down. So in short, if we don't get to that $10 or $12 cup of coffee in 3 years, we will see half of the cafes around the country close. There's 26,000 cafes at the moment. But I put this to you guys, right? People are happy to pay $15 for a schooner of beer at the pub right now, and I'll tell you why. It's because cafes represent community. Cafes represent a place where you go. It's not just about the cup of coffee. So we really got to look wider than the price of the cup and say what's coming with that cup of coffee, because you can make your coffee cheaper at home. People are drinking more coffee at home, but we can also drink a beer in our home for $2.50 from a local bottle shop. Why are we drinking it in a pub? There's so much more that sits around a cup of coffee, just like so much more sits around a schooner of beer, and that's that community, that's that interaction, that's sitting down in a space with a newspaper. So we just got to keep that in mind.
Got to tell you, Phillip, no one's that happy about paying $15 for a schooner of beer, but thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, can you imagine what Australia's going to be like with caffeine withdrawal symptoms at $12?
Well, you bought my coffee for me today. I don't think you'll do a shout like that.
Never again, Ash, never again.